Hello, I'm Jamie McKinley, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Just Get a Real Job. And this is a brilliant episode to kick off 2026 with, and it's an absolute pleasure to welcome on the podcast Karla Williams Posiuniene. Karla is a really talented screenwriter and is also the founder of MsMono, and she's been making some great stuff on social media and on LinkedIn about what it's really like to be a screenwriter, especially at a time where the screen industry is changing and things have been a bit difficult for many writers and creatives, but Karla is really taking control of her own career and has got some really interesting things to say about how to do that, about how she's been growing as a writer, how she's grown a production company. This is a brilliant episode and it's a really good one to kick the year off with, so hope you guys enjoy. Thank you as well for all your continued support. It's been great to see the podcast going from strength to strength, and I've got some big things planned for 2026. Lots of great episodes recorded, lots of great guests lined up, so stay tuned. There's lots of exciting things to come, and I hope you enjoy episode 86 of the podcast. Just get a real job. Karla, how's it going? Thank you very much for coming on Just Get a Real Job. It's lovely to meet you and lovely to have you on the podcast.
Great, I'm really happy to be here. Thank you.
You've been working in TV as a writer for many years. You've got a background in playwriting as well. But one of the reasons I've asked you to come on the podcast is you've been posting a lot of really interesting things on social media about your journey as a writer. But the video that particularly struck me was about how you parted ways with your agent. I think it was Curtis Brown, and you're making waves in your own now. You're like sort of going out on your own, and I think it's an interesting time in the screen industry, and a lot of people are sort of moving to that model. So I suppose a good place to start is, as well as introducing yourself for our listeners, is to talk about that and why you've decided to go out on your own.
Yeah, cool. So I broke into the industry as a TV screenwriter in 2020 during BLM summer, where multiple industries, but particularly for me, film and TV, were really focused on supporting Black talent. So I broke in August, and I signed to Curtis Brown. I got an agent with Curtis Brown. I had an idea developed over like an 18-month contract. And then sort of off the back of that, I ended up co-writing an episode of Grantchester for ITV. And then I was eventually in a writer's room for sort of an Amazon Studios drama, as well as writing my first sort of piece for Audible UK. So all of that was happening. And I think what I didn't realize at the time was that I was kind of waiting for my career to be given to me rather than actually driving the development of my career myself. So this all sort of came to a head in July 2024 when I parted ways with my Curtis Brown agent. And actually that same month, I also started working part-time because I had struggles to make a full-time income from freelancing alone. So I got a part-time job, so I didn't necessarily have to worry about money so much. And then sort of November of last year, I just kind of started feeling like I need to be doing more. So alongside being a screenwriter, I've got a production company called MsMono. MsMono sort of champions the voices of global majority women across film, TV, and audio. And I sort of, with MsMono, the work that I do, I also set up an event series, which is called MsMono Meets, which sort of is a space facilitated to hear from established women working in film and TV. And last November, I had an event. It was a MsMono event, sort of collaborating with the Universal Music Publishing Group. And across the course of the events, there were like 16 women talking about their experiences. And a similar thing that kept being repeated was they were driving their careers. And it sort of slowly began to dawn on me that I don't think I was doing enough to push my career forward. And now that I didn't have an agent, and I also had some income coming from elsewhere, it actually gave me an opportunity to really focus. So then I was like, okay, cool. What do I need to do to sort of start developing the production company MsMono to be a sustainable, fully established production company? Because up until that part, my focus had been my TV career. So MsMono was there and we were doing stuff, but it wasn't intentional. It was all very like, oh, this would work. Let's try this. Oh, this is a good opportunity. Let's try that. There wasn't any intention behind any of it. So that's kind of where it all started. And then I started sharing the journey on social media in July of this year because a friend of mine who was on social media, the wonderful Velvet Jones, she's brilliant and amazing, also known as Sophia Brown. I met with her and she was like, we were kind of having a bit of a catch up. So I hadn't seen her for a few years. And she was like, why are you not sharing this on social media? So then I was like, oh, I don't know. Why am I not sharing it on social media? So that kicked off in July of this year.
You said you felt like you weren't driving your career. This is really interesting. This is something I'm hearing a lot more people talking about. And I don't know if it's partly a product of the TV industry being in quite a bad place at the moment where there's much less opportunity. So you can't rely on a company or an agent to bring you work and create opportunities
Mm.
as much as maybe you used to be able to. But it's also for me, I mean, I'm a script editor in TV. I'm currently going for a redundancy. The show I work on River
Yeah.
City is shutting down, so I'm going to be out of a job soon, which is quite scary. I had that thing as well where I know it's slightly different to being a writer, but when I got my first job as a script editor, I thought, I've made it in. That's my
Yeah.
like I've got a career, and it's not like that at all. It's just you've got a career until your contract runs out.
Exactly. You've got a job. Yeah.
Yeah, it's something I'm also struggling to, at the moment, am I driving my career enough as well, making those things happen? So I've really related to you on that, and it is an interesting one. But how have you found not having an agent? Like, and has it been scary in a way, or have you found it's driven you more in a sense? Because I think a lot of people feel they need to have an agent to be a writer.
Yeah. So I think also, to be fair, the narrative around film and TV is you kind of break in and then it happens. And I think more people are doing so now, but there's very much a sort of velvet curtain with film and TV. And there's all the things people think are happening, but when you peek behind the curtain, you realize that actually there's so much more work involved than you previously realized. So a bit like you, I was so focused on getting an agent, breaking into the industry, getting my first TV credit. Like I thought those three things would mean a career would just materialize in front of me. I didn't understand how much work was required to actually consistently be building your career. So I think our experiences is because the industry's kind of set up that way, to be fair. Like I do think it's this idea of you break in and then you have this career. And I've been speaking to a couple of people who've been in the industry for longer than me, and they were a bit like, well, 5 years ago it was like that, but a lot has changed sort of in the last 5 years. So back to your question about is it scary? Actually, no. And more is happening, and I'm doing more now than I actually ever thought that I personally, as an individual, could be achieving at this point. So sort of November, as I said, I began to sort of feel this shift that I needed to do things differently. And then in December, it occurred to me that if I want to be building a slate with MsMono, I need to hire a development executive. So I started the process in December of 2024. And then in February 2025, Latoya Wilson joined our company as a development exec. And having Latoya on board has been the switch I think the company needed. Because off the back of having Latoya on board, so when I hired her, the plan was we'll make 2 short films. That literally was the plan. Can you find 2 short films? And since then, now we're in November 2025, just about to announce a short film that we're adding to our slate. So we're literally working on a press release for that now. We have an audio project that's in development with myself and another company. And we have 3 TV projects on the slate, which I just never really planned to. And one of them, we've applied for funding in the US for one of them. And the other 2, we're currently actively pitching to UK broadcasters. And honestly, a year ago, I just never thought I'd be doing this. But having Latoya on board and having someone to help find work and develop work has kind of freed me up to be a lot more strategic. And also with Latoya, so an opportunity came up for us to sort of some US funding. And I literally was like, well, we can't apply for that. We don't have a project. And it took Latoya being like, oh no, we do have this project. Because at the time it was like an audio drama. And she was like, that would really work as a TV show. And it was that change of perspective that I was like, oh, it would. And then that kind of started, and that was probably August of this year, that started the TV development side of things. And also kind of as a screenwriter, I was planning, because I had a few relationships with production companies that I made while I was with my agent, that I didn't need an agent to be able to be in contact with them. And I'd reached out to them, and it was 3 of them, and they were all really interested in the idea that I had. But that interest never then moved into paid development. So for me, organically, it just started happening. Everything I then started developing, I was developing with MsMono. I wasn't developing on my own because what I was trying to develop outside of the company just kind of wasn't working. And now it's actually turned into a massive positive because having a production company is opening doors that being a writer could just never have opened, essentially.
That's so interesting as well. And I think I remember you speaking about in that video, and I'll link all your socials below the podcast as well so people can go and check out the content you're making and you're honest, like look at how you're navigating a career. But you talked about how you often were waiting for things to happen, like you'd send something in and then you just wait to hear back. And then whereas now you're in control more of what you're
100%. And it's like, what do I want to do? And I think it's twofold. It's one, having a part-time job is actually really, really helping with all of this. Because also when I was freelance, my focus had to be paying the rent and the bills. So I couldn't necessarily be as selective over projects as I would have liked to have been because I needed the money. Whereas now I know my bills are covered. It's like, well, actually, what do I want MsMono to be doing? What other kind of projects I want to be developing? So it's also having that financial safety net has helped me for this year be more strategic in the projects that I want to work on, sorry. And I've also realized, and it's because of my experience where I've learned this, like having one project is great, it's brilliant, but that's not a career. Like I've had big projects before and I still didn't have a career. So it's because of the experience that I've had, what I've taken from that and learned from that is in this industry, I constantly need to be thinking about the next project and building slates as opposed to working on a project, which is what I was doing before.
I want to quickly discuss the part-time work thing because this is something a lot of my listeners get very surprised when I have someone on that they perceive to be like having made it or be like a, full-time writer or running a company or whatever. They get surprised when someone's having to pick up other work. And I really appreciate when guests are open about the fact that they have a part-time job or they, have that. And do you find that having that job a few days a week, it just frees up the anxiety of being a freelancer to allow you to be more creative? Because I struggle with the freelance nature of this industry, and I think if I went freelance again, and which I probably will have to, I think I'll struggle with that as well. Like it's hard to maybe be creative when you feel like, have I got enough to pay the bills in 2 weeks?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that was a pressure I didn't even know I was under. So I'm now, because I've been working part-time for about a year and a half now. And I would say in the last sort of year, 6 months, the last sort of 6 months, I'm now in a place where I'm actually juggling quite a lot because there's a part-time work and the creative work is picking up, but it's still not to the point where it's paying for itself. Because I think another thing that people don't realize about this industry is the amount of unpaid work that is required before money starts coming in. So there's so much development of ideas and projects and meeting people and networking and connecting that is required before significant rent paying money is introduced into the pipeline. So I think previously as a freelancer, I wasn't particularly creative because I was quite stressed every month about making rent. It was actually looking back on it now, I was 100% in survival mode because I was just literally trying to get from 1 month to the other. And I don't think survival mode is a great place for your optimum creativity at all. So now having that pressure off, I've actually found myself to be so much more creative. And I'm coming up with ideas at a much faster pace and also being able to develop them at a much faster pace. So I think it's a combination of growing as a writer, but also having that financial safety net, which is really important. But as I said, now it's like I'm juggling when can I potentially now move away from not all of it. But I think having consistent income is wise until certain things are in place. But now it's a bit of a juggling act. And it can be a little bit stressful, truth be told. Yeah, juggling all the things with MsMono, especially now that I'm so much more active on social media because that content has to be made week in, week out. And the part-time jobs, it's a bit of a struggle right now. It's a bit of a juggle.
I know it's hard. It's hard trying to do loads of stuff as well. Because then I find if you stop, you feel like you're falling behind as well. So that's another. It's on the other side of the issue of the stress it causes. But again, this is what one of my big frustrations with this industry is at times, and why it excludes so many working class voices. Because I think I read an article today that called it a working class creative tax almost, where it's like all the unpaid things you do to even put you in the position to have a chance of a career. It's so hard. It is really hard, but it is interesting.
Because I don't think the industry was built by working class people, which is why the methods to getting work and the process for getting work doesn't suit us because it wasn't built by us. Because there's so much that you have to do before you get a significant paycheck. It's quite a lot.
I know. And if you can't afford to take a risk or take an unpaid job for a bit, or it just makes it even harder for sure. I want to ask you just before we go on to more to talk about MsMono and what you're doing now, but I want to go back, cast your mind back to your sort of early stages. How did you first get into writing?
Oh, so I first got into writing over 20 years ago now, which feels like an age. So I studied theatre studies at school for my GCSEs. So I knew what a play looked like, but I'd never seen a screenplay in my life. And I was a member of I was part of the church, and they used to have they call them skits, these little tiny plays that they would put on. And I actually thought they were terrible. And I remember saying to my mum, these are really bad. And I think it's because I was studying theatre, so I knew about theatre, and I thought what my church was doing was terrible. So my mum said to me, I was probably about 15 at the time, she said, well, if anyone can write anything, you can. So I started getting involved with the church, with the skits that they were doing. And then when I was 19, I wrote my first play, which I sort of staged with some friends from my church community. So that's how I first got into writing over 20 years ago.
And
Mm.
but it's so interesting because like I think a lot of people that start in playwriting, it's so hard to like then get into screenwriting in a way because they are quite different. But there obviously is a lot of similarity. It gives you a lot of grounding. But when you moved into more into screenwriting, how long did it take you to be like, oh my God, this is quite different? Or were you quite confident moving into that?
So I moved into screenwriting on my own. So my career as a playwright, I achieved a few things. So I was like longlisted for the Bruntwood Prize. I was longlisted
Wow.
for an Alfred Fagan Awards. I got into like a couple of writing courses, one of which was a Royal Court one back in 2008, which was a lifetime ago. And I had short plays on in like fringe venues, but I never sort of started building a relationship with the sort of big new writing theatres. I never got a playwriting agent. So I worked at the National Theatre as a sound administrator until 2015. And when I left the National Theatre, I had a play that I was trying to get on and it didn't really go anywhere. But then I had an idea for a TV drama because I've watched TV my entire life. Like my family used to eat dinner around the TV. We like adored TV. To this day, I still make recommendations to my dad about what he should be watching. We love TV in our family. So I had this idea fit a screenplay. So I wrote it. It was terrible. So I ended up getting an exec at Wall to Wall Media. I sort of literally cold called her office, got through to her voicemail, sent her an email, and she was like, okay, I'll read some of this stuff. And she told me it was terrible. So I then went away and started to learn how to write for screen. So that's I made the choice myself to go into TV because I'm all self-taught and I've just kind of been building my skills since then.
It's interesting that you just were like, no, I'll learn it myself. Kind of interesting that you've gone back to your roots in a way with what you're doing now, sort of trying to take the initiative yourself and
To a
make things
degree, yeah.
happen.
Because I think because I perceive myself in a particular way, but I'm beginning to realize there's always been more strings to my bow than just a writer. Because for a really long time, I saw myself like, oh, I'm just a writer. Like, I love writing, but I'm just a writer. That's what I do. But actually, if I think back to the first project I ever did, I didn't just write it, I wrote it and I produced it as well. So I think it is a sort of return, I would say. Or another way to put it is seeing skills that for a really long time I didn't particularly value. Because I thought anyone could like get their friends together and put on a play. I thought the skill was being able to write the play. I didn't realize there was
Mhm.
also skills in being able to put this play together and get it on. So I think now I'm in a stage where I'm valuing a wider range of what my skill set is than I'd previously done before.
When you were sort of starting out and before, because I know you've obviously written on shows, existing shows as a guest writer, and you've worked, you'd have credits as a screenwriter and stuff before you had an agent, and then before you like left the agent and stuff. But did you have anyone at the time helping you? Because there was a lot of people be listening who are wondering how you actually get paid to do that as a writer. How did that all come about?
So I had support from I've had a few different mentors at different times in my career. But at that time, the mentor that helped me get an agent was Hilary Bevan Jones. And I met Hilary Bevan Jones because I applied to be her assistant. So outside of the industry, administration is also kind of a skill set that I have. And I think it was 2019 or 18, I can't remember. I applied to be Hilary Bevan Jones' assistant. And Hilary Bevan Jones is like a BAFTA and Emmy winning producer who's
Mhm.
been in the industry for like 50 plus years. She's like an old school TV person. And I got down to the final two. And as part of the interview, I spoke about obviously all that I'm doing, the production company, the writing. And she just instinctually felt that I wasn't her assistant. But she was like, I really want to support you in this other stuff that you're doing. And then fast forward to 2020, I think I had a reading of a project online and I invited Hilary. And while I was talking about kind of what I wanted to do, I mentioned I wanted to have it. I wanted an agent. So she was like, okay, cool, let me help you. So Hilary introduced me to two agents. And then also during that time, social media really wanted to help Black creatives because it was, BLM summer 2020. And someone else introduced me to someone else who then introduced me to Curtis Brown agents. So Hilary was quite one of the people that was quite instrumental in getting me signed with an agent in the first place. And then the actual TV gig came through directly through my agent.
Nice. How did you find like working at going in for the first time, like writing on for another TV show? Was that hard? Because I know a lot of I work with a lot of writers as a script editor, and it's interesting how many great writers struggle to write existing characters, and some really pick it up instantly, and some others struggle because they're so and their own scripts are incredible, but they just can't get their head around it. I think it's quite a tricky skill actually.
So I really enjoyed it, but I think I really enjoyed it, and it was quite a supportive environment for me because I went on as a co-writer, and I was working with a writer who had been on the show for like a few years and knew the characters inside and out. So what we did was we both sort of lent into our skill sets and what we were good at. So because it's Grantchester, so there's a crime show. So every episode there's like a new murder. I focused on the new murder because that was a brand new character that I could create. And I also contributed to the scenes where established characters were sort of developing, well, it was their story, but I would have help from Richard, who would then tweak my dialogue. So that's kind of how it worked. So I would kind of write certain bits, give them to him, he would tweak them, and vice versa. So I think because I had a co-writer, it helped really well. So my main focus was the new characters and more so contributing to the stories of the existing characters, as opposed to if I was writing the episode completely on my own, creating the new characters and creating the stories for the existing characters. So I think that balance helped it be quite a supportive and enjoyable experience as opposed to super stressful.
And have you found from doing a show like and having credits now on your CVs that even though you're not going for an agent now, has that helped you unlock like projects that you're working on now with MsMono and stuff? Because if there's often people say you need this many credits, and I think there's a lot of frustration for writers that can't get a credit. That how can they ever get a start?
So for me now, I think it all depends. So I'm being perfectly honest. I think having Grantchester has been helpful to help me understand how the industry works. I'm not necessarily the people I'm talking to now. I think it helps that I've got some experience writing for a TV show, but the new ideas that I'm coming up with now, because I think having Grantchester and the writers room credit helps demonstrate the ability to write scripts and to work on scripts. And obviously the skills that I've picked up as a writer from working on them does contribute to the ability I now have to turn out scripts and ideas that are my own. However, both projects I worked on are not really in the sort of themes and topics that I explore in my own work. So it helps me more from an experience point of view. And I think how I'm viewed in the industry, because I'm someone who's proved that I can work on broadcast shows or a broadcast show. But with regards to, no one said to me, oh, we're taking this meeting with you because you've been on Grantchester. But that might be the reason they have. I have no idea. Do you see what I mean?
That's interesting. Yeah, no, there's a lot of chat about, but I think a lot of people don't realize that a lot of writers they get paid to develop something for a few years, and then but it never gets made, and then people never realize they'd worked. And I think sometimes I think that's quite unfair as well, because the amount of paid development in this country that never goes anywhere, I think it blows people's minds sometimes actually.
For me, when I didn't realize that until I joined the industry, because my estimation is like 70% of stuff never gets made. But then also, I think for me, I had to change how I view development, because in my first development gig, I was convinced the project was going to get made, and I then held on to that project for much longer than I should have done because I was convinced it was going to get made, not yet realizing the fact that a lot of things in development don't get made, and sometimes if they do, it could be like 10 years down the line. So I think the viewpoint of development has to change. It has to be more about what can I as a writer get from this? What skills can I develop? What relationships can I build to help move my career forward? Because again, I think the shift in thinking I have is it's less about jobs and more about careers over a long period of time. And because I think say for example, you have a project in development, doesn't get made, but you build a great relationship with that production company. They love working with you. Fast forward 2 years later, another show gets made. They need a writer. You'll be like first on the list of the people that they want to call. I think that's how you have to view the industry, or how I've come to now view the industry. It's less about, I'm working on this with you and it's going to get made. It's like, cool, I'm working on this with you. I'm going to learn as much as I can from this process. I'm going to do the best that I can. I'm going to build a great relationship here. Then I'm going to move on to the other project, which I'm already thinking and talking to people about. There's so many moving parts. It's about being more strategic in how eventually these parts can come together. And I think that's definitely the shift that I've made, because previously it was like, oh yeah, I'm working on this. It's going to get made. It's going to be great. And then it didn't. And I was like at a loss for 2 years because I wasn't expecting it and I didn't know how to move past it.
That's such an interesting answer, and that's really helpful for a lot of people as well to hear. Just to expand on that, this is something I've had to learn the hard way, and I still don't think I'm quite there, but are you able to separate your self-worth from your career and as a writer, someone working in the sort of screen industry? Because I think often if you're creative and you do what you love for a living, it's part of you. So then if a project doesn't get greenlit, or you get rejected, or you lose a job, it can really hurt and like be quite hard to get over. I've found that when I've lost jobs in the past and stuff. Like, you managed to separate your identity as someone that runs a company as well, or is it quite hard to do that for you?
So I've only been able to do that since, well, not because I got married in September, but I've been able to do that. Thank you. Do that more since I've been in the relationship with my now husband. So my husband doesn't love me because I'm a great screenwriter. He doesn't think I'm a great wife because I'm a great screenwriter or because I run a company. Those things don't really matter. He wants me to be happy, and he wants me to do things that I'm passionate about, and he's really supportive. But that's not why he married me, because I run a production company. That's not why he married me at all. And I think because I think I completely agree with you. I think it's really hard to separate your self-worth from the work that you do sometimes, because it's so intrinsic to who we are as people. But I think it's really worth investing and building relationships that value you outside of the industry, because I think that helps maintain your longevity inside the industry. Because if your self-worth is based completely upon what you do in the industry, and you go through a period of 2 years and you do nothing, then your self-worth is in the toilet. Do you know what I mean? And I think that can contribute to why you don't feel this industry is for you. Now, don't get me wrong. I think there are multiple reasons why people leave the industry, and I think they're very valid, because that industry is incredibly difficult. But I think it helps to invest in relationships and have relationships in your life that value you, whether you sold the show or you haven't, whether you booked the job or you haven't. I think that really helps. And also, I just really think having money that comes to you, consistent income outside of the industry, is also really important. Because it just removes pressure that sometimes, because I didn't know the weight I was carrying until it was removed. And I was like, oh, I feel lighter now that I literally am not. So my cycle used to be make the rent, celebrate for 2 weeks, be chilled for 2 weeks, and then stress for 2 weeks to figure out how to make the rent again. And that cycle went on for several months. And it's not a great way to live. It's just not a great way to live. And it's a pressure that until you're out of it, you don't even really know that you've had.
No, it's so true. I think this industry sadly does like spit so many people out sometimes and chew people up, and it's hard. It's so true though. I think if you think about the friendships or relationships in your life, most people don't like you because you do their job. They like you because of the qualities or loads of other things. So yeah, it's very true. And sometimes it's hard. Sometimes I don't know if you're filming, if you're working on a production, or you've got a deadline. It's hard to you have to remind yourself that. But I think it's really interesting, and I appreciate you opening up about the answer as well. It's a really nice answer. I want to talk again to you about MsMono, and sort of, I suppose there's maybe two questions, but what have the sort of challenges been with building MsMono up from the ground up? And also, how's the industry changed since you started MsMono? Because it's a very different time to 2017 to what we're at now.
Yeah. So what's the challenges? Money. It's the main challenge, because as I said, this year has been very much about development. And where to start my answer. So MsMono was the original production company on an Audible original drama called Do Not Disturb, which came out in August of this year. And as part of that sort of setup, I was paid a fee as an executive producer for MsMono, which I then kept within the company. So that money was great because it helped me to hire Latoya and sort of obviously pay for the work that she did to help build the slate. That money has also run out. So, and that went out like...
I shouldn't laugh. It was just how candidly you said it.
Yeah, like that money has run out. So money is the biggest thing, because lack of money means I'm limited as to what I can do with the company. So the primary focus right now is continuing to pay Latoya's freelance salary. That's the primary focus, which I'm obviously working on each month to be able to pay her. However, if there was more... if there was more money, I could do more with the company, because I wouldn't have to invest my time in other places to make money, the kind of part-time jobs that I was talking about. But however, I say all of that, I'm hoping that that's only really going to be the case for this year. Because what I've done with this year is develop a number of projects and apply for funding in different places and pitches to different people. So the hope is that in 2026, some of the money will start to come in so that we have the money to be able to develop projects further and support both Latoya and myself. That's the plan for 2026. So I think while it wasn't necessarily intentional, like I didn't set out to this year is going to be a development year, but that's how it sort of panned out. But I'm hoping that by investing so much in development this year, some money will start to come in next year. So I think money is the issue, but that's my approach to sort of managing the money situation. And you asked me another question that I can't remember. What was the other question you asked me?
So it was just about how the industry's changed as well.
Oh, okay, cool. So I think social media has become much more important now, and it's being valued a lot more now than it was before. So I think when I broke in, it was kind of, you only go to social media if you're not good enough for TV, was kind of the vibe. Whereas now it's like production companies, channels want you to have audiences in other places, because so much now is, because there's so much competition, and TV's not just competing with other TV channels, TV's also competing with social media and TikTok and Instagram and YouTube. Having an established audience is now kind of becoming the ask when developing TV ideas, because you need a way to guarantee in quotation marks, because nothing's a guarantee, that the show will be watched by people. And if you have an audience elsewhere, that helps give commissioners peace of mind that the show will be successful. So investing in building an audience online is now becoming more important than it was when I started. And also maybe creating projects that go directly to your audience as opposed to doing the whole TV thing anyway is now an option, but that wasn't really an option when I started.
No, so it's really true now that it's also about like personal brands become quite a big thing. So it's like your visibility. So people see that you personally have an online brand, whether that be on LinkedIn or Instagram or wherever it is. It shows that you have your own audience as well. And yeah, it's a strange one. It's kind of, I don't know, it's like we're not in a monoculture anymore. It's like even when people watch TV, there's so many streamers now and channels, and people like, you know, you meet somebody and you're like, oh, have you seen Severance? And like, even though it's a huge show, it's not, I don't think as many people watch it as you might think. So it's like an example where there's loads of examples of that now. So I think
yeah,
if you
I completely agree. And I think it also, though, what's good about this change is more people can find their audience, because I think previously there were certain gatekeepers telling you who the audiences were. And if you didn't fit what they thought your audience, if they didn't think there was an audience for you, then your show is no going nowhere. Whereas now, I think creators, TV creators and people online have the capacity to find your own audience. And how you choose to navigate that, if you choose to then take that audience to a TV channel and say, well, look, great, I've got this many thousand followers here. Or if you choose to just directly engage with your audience and create work for them, I think the time we're living in now allows more racially diverse, class diverse, like gender diverse people to be able to find their own audiences and sustain careers that way, versus the previous way, which was completely reliant upon gatekeepers.
Completely. And I think in a way that I'm being naive, but that's the one thing I have optimism in quite a difficult time in the industry, is that at least people might be able to find a direct audience themselves. And it's like, even the way I now, so I've recently, it's only in the last 2 months, I've really started using TikTok more consistently as a tool to grow this podcast. And what I've found is I used to get frustrated if I didn't have a video that would, in my head, you know, it's getting seen by quite a lot of people. But now what I'm more interested in, it's not so much views, it's like, are the right people viewing it? So if only 500 people watch my video, if most of them are in the creative industries and are interested in the podcast, that's way better than like 100,000 people that only 20 of them like, you know, will come and listen. So it's an interesting way to view it as well.
And I think that this way is harder as a creator. Well, no, it's all hard, I guess, to be fair. None of it's easy. I think that what I've sort of felt in the last sort of 6 months that I've been, or the last year to 6 months that I've been taking more ownership over my career, is I feel less, obviously it was like you did all this hard work, you kind of offered it up and you waited. Whereas now I feel so much more empowered and in control over what I'm doing and who I'm working with. And also I'm realizing I'm having the power to build new relationships and new opportunities consistently. And if I've done that with 6 projects, I can then do that with another 6 projects and another 6 projects. And it's also helping me find collaborators and people who are aligned with who I am as a creative and the kind of work that I want to create. Yeah, and on top of all of that, I'm writing and developing more than I sort of ever have done before. So it's definitely, it feels more empowering, and that feeling of empowerment is much more sustaining than the feeling of constantly waiting for something to happen for you. Whereas now I'm like, I'm making stuff happen for myself. And that gets me out of bed in ways that sitting around waiting never did. I'm definitely more tired than I've ever been before. And I'm definitely like juggling more and feeling the stress of that. Let's be perfectly transparent. But there's an empowerment underneath all of it as I'm seeing small seeds that I've been planting beginning to sprout and grow, compared to waiting for an agent to call or waiting for this opportunity to happen. It's much more empowering.
Yeah, and that can sometimes just, in a way, make the difference, because at least it's on your, as you say, it's the one thing is it's on your own terms, and that can help you be more creative as well. I've got a few more questions before we wrap up, but something the listeners always love these sort of questions, especially if they're aspiring writers, and it's always a hard question to ask a writer. I always find this fascinating as a script editor. Everyone's different, but do you have like a routine or an approach to how you sit and write like a show, or like when you show up to write, do you have like a routine that you do every day, or is it does it just depend?
As in, when I'm actually writing, what the routine is?
Like your approach to just writing, like in general.
Okay. I think the time away from my laptop is as valuable as the time in front of my laptop. Like, I'm not one of these writers that will sit and stare at a blank page for hours. So to be fair, I don't personally know a writer that does that, but there's often this image of like writers sitting staring at blank pages. That's just not me. So I spend a lot of time figuring stuff out in my head as best as I can. And also, I'm a firm believer in a script outline. Like, I never just jumped into a script ever. Like, I find that's not super helpful for me. And also character work. I always do some character work. So the order I'll do it, because also for me, I would say when I have a new idea, it comes from a character first. So then I'll spend a bit of time doing some character work in a couple of documents, working out like what the wants are, what the objectives are, all that kind of stuff. Then I will work on some sort of script outline, just to like a sort of beat by beat of the story. And then I will move into a script. That's kind of the rough approach that I take. But whenever I sit down to write, I know exactly what I'm doing in this period of writing. And also I tend to have moments of not being in the zone, but like when everything's flowing really well, I sit and I stay in that and complete stuff. And then when it's like, okay, there's more stuff I need to figure out, that's when I'll take a break. But I won't take a break and be doing nothing. I'm taking a break. So for example, recently I had to come up with a story outline for an audio idea. And in my head, I was quite clear about what the first half of the drama was going to be and the world that was going to be set in. So I spent a day or two just writing that out, getting that as tight as I could. And then I knew the second half of the world, because the world shifted, I wasn't quite clear on that. So that's when I'm like, okay, this is where I'm stopping. Go away and do some research. Go away thinking about stuff. Go away and watching what I need to watch, reading what I need to watch. And then a week later, I came back and wrote the second part. So that's my approach to it. And obviously, I did all of that within the deadline that I had. Yeah, that's my approach.
No, it's interesting that what I find it fascinating, because everyone's very different. Some writers hate outlines. Some writers need to like have a cup of coffee at 9 or whatever and then do exact ritual and stuff. So I mean, people are always interested. Whenever I have writers on the podcast, I find that a lot of listeners are always like, "I want to know how they approach." But there's no magic way either. How are you good with do you like deadlines? Some writers really need a deadline. Do you feel like you need one?
So I work really well with the deadline because I'm juggling so much, having a deadline helps me plan enough time, and when it helps me prioritize having a deadline. So yes, I work really well with deadlines. And also for me, an outline. Yeah, I need an outline. 100%. Because I feel I write my best scripts when I'm prepared. So if I'm writing a script and figuring out the story and figuring out the character at the same time, this draft of the script is not going to be very good. So to me, it's a waste of my time. I would rather do some character work, do an outline, so that the first draft is never great, but it's better because I've figured stuff out, as opposed to figuring out as I type. Because I feel I'm freer to create scenes and dialogue when I already know the purpose of the scene. Like, I already know in this scene, we need to establish that he hates his sister or she hates her brother, whatever. If I know I need to do that, I can be more focused on how I can create that in this scene, as opposed to figuring out, oh, so what is it he wants in this scene? Oh, where are they? Like, I don't create my best when I feel uncertain. I create better when I'm certain about what. And again, that might change. Like as when you're writing the scripts, when you started, yes, in the scene, we need to figure out that he hates his sister in a really dramatic way. And that might change and that's cool. But I'd rather go prepared and make adjustments than not prepared and be scrambling. That just doesn't personally work.
Yeah. What, just to sort of expand on that as well with MsMono and stuff, what would you like to see more of on TV, and what sort of stories are you trying to create?
It's a great question, dude. I would like to see more stories that center global majority women and their experiences, and also a rich diversity in the stories that come from this community or this group of people. And those are projects I'm really working on now. So I'm a huge, I love TV. I adore TV. And the projects I'm trying to create now are taking some of our well-known genres, for example, a crime procedural or a law firm drama, but set it from a different point of view, the point of view of a Black working class woman, the point of view from a Pakistani Muslim woman. That's the kind of stuff that I'm really kind of creating and developing now, because I think the genres really work. But I think what people are getting a bit tired of is a repetition of the same people in the same genres telling the same stories. Like we really do not need another white police officer in a crime procedural. We've seen like 100 of them. Like we really have. So I'm just but again, because I love TV and I love some of the genres, being able to use these genres to tell more interesting stories that represent more people and allow for more people to feel seen when they watch TV shows. Because I think there's a massive power in feeling seen when connecting with media. And that's the kind of work that I want to create.
Definitely. No, representations, I think seeing yourself on screen's vitally important, no matter like what background you're from. I think it's very needed. And I think you're right. I think people are tired of the same stories being told, or inauthentic stories being told as well. Like, I imagine that's quite frustrating for you when you see like minority people be represented in a way that's actually not very authentic, and it's done to tick a box instead of to actually tell a proper story, which is what we need.
I agree. And I also think in the world now where there is so much TV and so many platforms and so many shows being made, and people are so concerned with cutting through the noise and, being seen, authenticity is key. Like I think the more we're trying to make telling stories into a formula, the worse things are going to get. Like I think we need to go back to people telling authentic stories, because I think there's a universality, I think that's a word, in authenticity. Even like I watched Pose, for example, set in 1980s, 1990s drag ball culture with like Black and brown trans women. That's not my world, never has been at all. But the authenticity in their stories connects. But I just think universal stories connect on a human level with people across communities and genders and classes. Because it's, as my cousin says, real sees real. Like when you know that real story, you can connect with that more. Because it connects in the humanity within you when you see true humanity also displayed on screen, as opposed to this formula for telling stories which doesn't connect with anyone.
Definitely. And I think if you set out to write in the formula as well, you're just on the back of it anyway. I think sometimes people try to overthink that bit. This will sell to this market or whatever. I think they always know the best stories are just good stories that no matter where you're from, you can connect with.
Yeah, I completely agree. I definitely agree. Like I don't worry about an audience when I'm telling a story. I worry about how true that story is and telling it with as much truth and reality as I can, even if it's scary. Like a project I'm working on now reveals a somewhat side of me that I'm not the proudest of, but I'm leaning into that as opposed to leaning out of it.
I always think that's the most interesting, the most rich. But again, to go back to your social media as well, I think what I've found with my own stuff I've been posting is the stuff that people connect most with is when I'm being brutally honest about something I'm struggling with in the TV industry or whatever it is. I think people respond way more to that, and it's kind of in the same way. It's like you being honest about your experiences of day to day. People are more interested in that than they are about like trying to be like, this is perfect and whatever.
Exactly. Because I think also nobody's life is really as perfect as we think. And I think there's images of people who have made it and have these great lives, but the vast majority of us consuming that aren't in that situation. So I guess for me as well, it just doesn't make you feel great. It makes you feel like you're doing something wrong, or there's something wrong with you, or you can never achieve certain things. And I just don't think that's true. I just think the method to achieving certain things needs to be shared more realistically, because a lot of people are figuring stuff out that you wouldn't think are figuring stuff out. So I'm just a big fan of peeking behind the curtain, because I felt so many unhelpful, demotivating, sort of beating myself up emotions when I see people doing things I think I should be doing. And I think,
Yeah.
again, that's not particularly empowering. And again, that's just further reinforces that I should be sitting wait for these careers to happen to me. Whereas now I realize, yes, there was things I shouldn't have, wasn't doing, but now I have the power to do them and change the situation that I'm in. And I think if that's what people truly want, we all have the kind of power to do that. But equally, I think not seeing this perfect image and the reality of what it takes is helpful. Yeah, it's really
Definitely.
helpful.
And it's unfortunately one of the downsides of social media. You always post the wins and you always post the best thing, which is why I'm now trying to do both. Whereas, like,
Yeah.
and that's the whole reason I do this podcast. And, even when I have people, I have had some guests on that, have made it and they are really successful, but I still like to ask them all the true stuff that goes on behind the scenes, because I think it's so important for people to hear. I've just got two more questions for you before we wrap up. So I'm going to speak for an hour, but this is the sort of lessons and advice. But for you, like, what's the sort of biggest lesson you've learned in your career, from running MsMono and from trying to be a writer, that you'd like to share?
A couple of lessons. Take ownership. Take ownership of your career. You cannot really rely on anyone else to build your career forward for you. Even if you have an agent, I think you should be really proactive in the kind of projects you want to work on, the people you want to work on. That's one piece of advice. And the second piece of advice is don't force things. Like, if something's not working or partnership isn't working, let it go. Don't feel you have to force to be in rooms you think you should be in. Be more true to who you are and allow natural collaborators to find you. Yeah. I think I was very focused on where I should be and trying to get in there. And when the doors wasn't opening, I'm just going to knock even further. Whereas now I'm trying to be more aligned or work with people that are more aligned with me. But that also means I need to be more true to who I am and what I want to create. So embracing self so that I can find like-minded people.
No, it's really nice bits of advice, really nice answers. And the sort of closing question as well, I've started reversing this question away because there's so much bad advice in this industry. So to close, what do you think is a really bad bit of advice that you've heard in your career yourself that you think people should ignore?
So I was told by a producer, don't worry about producing, just focus on being a writer. And I completely ignored that advice as quickly as I heard it. Because I just thought, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. So I'm just going to sit around writing scripts and sending them off to people and hoping or waiting. Yeah, that doesn't work. That was the advice he gave me, was forget about being a producer for now. Just focus on your screenwriting career. And then later on, maybe think about producing. And I didn't take that advice at all. Because now my screenwriting career is developing because I've got a production company.
That's really interesting as well. Karla, thank you so much for your time. You're a very inspiring person, and it's great to see how you've sort of taken ownership of your career. And I really appreciate you opening up about some of the struggles, but also how empowered you're now feeling. I think a lot of people at this quite difficult time when there's less opportunities will hopefully have listened to today's chat and take a bit of inspiration. Where can people find you as well?
So I am on Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. So my TikTok and Instagram names are q.karla. And on LinkedIn, you can find me as Karla with a K Williams. And I post across those platforms every week. And then also to find out more about MsMono is msmono.com. And you can sign up to a mailing list, which I send out semi-regularly.
Perfect. Well, there's links to all that below, but people like to hear it out loud. But Karla, thank you very much for your time. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much. I had a great time.
Just get a real job.